Australians consider this country to be a bit of a paradise. Unfortunately, since the white man has shown up, he's done nothing but trash the place. This is a list of all the introduced species on the New South Wales Weedwise website. A damning indictment of our duty of care and a clear indication of the idea that God made everything just for human benefit. Since its discovery, Whitey has stocked the place with all the crap from England to make it feel more like home. That has now accelerated, and we have introduced plants from virtually every point on the globe. So, not so much a paradise as a garden of weed. Yes, it's a whole video about weeds.
Okay, let's get down to it, boppers.
Attention, please, me hearties. We are about to set forth on a great voyage of discovery, a journey, Pirate William, to find new lands beyond the sea. I have here a map.
Within 5 years of white settlement in South Australia, 1836, the following weeds had established: chickweed, couch grass, Canadian fleabane, French catchfly, dwarf mallow, nettle, nightshade, greater plantain, common verbena, winter grass, hedge mustard, ryegrass perennial, wild oats, barley grass, cape weed, dock, variegated thistle, and common thorn apple. As stated in Ferdinand von Mueller's The Flora of South Australia, weeds were a subject of public debate in the mid-19th century. In its issue of the 2nd of February 1849, the South Australian newspaper quoted from an article in the Hobart Town Advertiser that urged each man to destroy his own thistles. In fact, in November 1849, a committee of the Legislative Council of Van Diemen's Land, it was not called Tasmania till 1856, recommended the introduction of legislation to compel landowners to control thistles on their land. However, there is no record that any such legislation was enacted. So why are weeds such a problem in Australia? My mum says,
a weed is a plant that's just growing in the wrong place.
To which I reply,
listen, lady, fuck that shit!
Australia has a unique range of plants due to its isolation from other continents and its diverse environmental conditions. Australia separated from the rest of the world tens of millions of years ago, thus its plants and animals evolved in isolation. Australia's environmental conditions are different from other countries, including nutrient-poor soils, a flat topography, and a high fire frequency. Australian plants have adapted to these conditions, developing unique features like hard leaves, C4 and CAM carbon fixation, and lignotubers. Also, Australia has a high proportion of endemic species, meaning they are found nowhere else on Earth. In fact, almost 88% of Australian plant species are endemic. Weeds affect the structure and function of land-based and aquatic ecosystems and impact negatively on native fauna and flora. They can displace native plant species and harbour pests and diseases. Weeds can also increase the biomass of ecosystems, leading to more intense bushfires, changing the composition and structure of native vegetation. More than $50 million of public money, about half from state government, supplemented by a large voluntary expenditure and effort, is currently being spent on weed control in New South Wales. However, the effort to control weeds is not keeping up with their rapid spread, and the New South Wales government has conceded it is unlikely to exceed its 2015 target of a reduction in the impact of invasive species. Weeds imperil more than 40% of New South Wales' threatened species, mostly plants, and about 90% of endangered ecological communities. So we know some weeds were brought here very early in Australia's history. Other ways that unwanted species have entered the country include seeds in camel harnesses. From the 1860s, camels were brought into South Australia via Port Augusta to service communities, pastoral properties and mines in South Australia, the Northern Territory, New South Wales and Queensland. Plants were also brought back by returning soldiers after the First World War. Visiting ships were known to dump contaminated ballast. They also arrived as contaminants in other seeds and grains, or brought in with livestock. Another way is overseas visitors arriving with fruit adhering to clothing or equipment, for instance miners during the 1860s gold rushes in Queensland. Plants also arrived with sealers and other seafarers. Burrs arrived with cottonseed. Also, South America and Southern Africa became early sources of weeds in Australia because Rio de Janeiro and Cape Colony were ports of call for shipping en route from Britain. In the never-ending attempt to curb the spread of weeds in Australia, the government has a list of 32 species that are considered weeds of national significance. This list includes Madeira vine, Lantana, bitu bush, ground asparagus, blackberry, Scotch broom, Japanese honeysuckle, broad-leafed privet, narrow-leafed privet, cat's claw creeper, salvinia, serrated tussock, Cape ivy, blue morning glory, balloon vine, lipia, bridal creeper, Mickey Mouse plant, turkey rhubarb, and sweet vernal grass. So read up on those plants and exterminate. Remember though, err on the side of caution. The rule of thumb for pulling out weeds is, if in doubt, don't pull it out. Which is, incidentally, the same technique I use for combating any possibly misinterpreted sexual advances. One of the main problem weeds around Sydney is Lantana, a large flowering shrub native to Central and South America that readily grows into thickets. After being brought to Australia as an ornamental garden plant in about 1841, the weed quickly escaped domestic cultivation and within 20 years was established in the wild. Lantana was first declared noxious around 1920, and by the 1950s it had spread over 1,600 kilometres of the eastern Australian coastline. This plant is as out of place as a cock ring in a convent. You know, we all love fruit and veggies, but I'd be talking about weeds. Now here's a beautiful vista. Hang on, what's this over here?
Shit! Fuck me dead.